Back in the glory days of 1990s cable television, I'd been a big fan of Comedy Central back in its early days, back when, like MTV, Comedy Central actually once mostly just featured stand-up comedy. I was aware of who Jon Stewart was long before he ever became host of The Daily Show. I remember watching him on his MTV show. I remember seeing his stand-up comedy. I remember not really caring much for Craig Kilborn and The Daily Show as it had been, and much preferring what Jon Stewart was doing with the show. And had noticed that kind of in the wake of, the events of 9/11, Jon Stewart had kind of become the moral conscience of the country in some ways. I know some folks want to argue over that one, but if you think about the timeline of events, when did the left start kind of becoming unhinged and going crazy and attacking itself and going a little overboard in its reactions to the things being said and done by their opposition and political power. All kind of coincided around the time that Jon Stewart quit The Daily Show and handed the baton off to Trevor Noah and all that kind of stuff. And now Jon Stewart's back, been commissioned by Apple Television, and he's got his show, The Problem with Jon Stewart. Ironically, despite the fact that I record these videos for my YouTube channel on an iPhone, I just have no interest in Apple Television, and hearing that Jon Stewart was going to have a show on there, kind of piqued my interest a little bit, but even then, it's not enough. Especially since apparently they really want Jon Stewart's message to get out there, because most of his stuff is just kind of being leaked in big chunks and bites onto YouTube anyway, and so if you've been following, their channel, you'll be seeing their videos. I find the whole thing a little strange. There's something a bit different in Jon Stewart's demeanor. I feel, especially as we're kind of starting to see in this whole recent episode about racism, there's an anger kind of underneath the veneer that Jon Stewart, presents as a television personality and as whatever comedic investigative journalist that he's evolved into in his old age. I find that since the beginning there's, things I find weird. I did quite like the fact that that they are on the path of seeing that, corporate green agendas aren't actually really green at all and aren't doing really anything to actually, make, life better for the planet if, these sorts of things are your concerns and all that. I don't think they're ever going to get to the end of the train of logic and realize that, the solution to saving the planet is not an ask that is viable for humanity. The ultimate answer is to unplug everything and go back to, basically being nomad horticulturalists / hunters, living directly off the land and not even building big permanent structures and stuff or farming. It's not just, abandoning the electric grid and computers and the industrial age. It's abandoning the entire agricultural age. Everything that's been going on for the last 5,000 to 7,000 years would somehow have to be unwound and unspooled, and even then, all the garbage of it is still going to be here behind. It's an unsolvable problem, but people generally, when they're riding a logic train, don't take it all the way to the end of the line. They'll hop off on whatever stop that's along its route that they find the most pleasant, and then they pretend that the train doesn't go anywhere beyond that point. But man, the stuff coming out with the racism episode, there's this weird blind spot I feel that's kind of going on in the whole thing. I find it interesting. I mean, the video this morning where it was his all white panel just devolves almost immediately. If you like watching cringy dumpster fires, feel free to look it up and watch it. If that's not really your bag, that one's worth skipping. I found his interview with Cory Booker more interesting. It was nice and long. I've always actually liked Cory Booker. He's one of the few Democrat candidates I would happily vote for. I know, terrible controversial thing to say there. But compared to, most of the others, I would have been quite happy with Cory Booker, and I still feel that way after him, doing an interview of that length. Especially since, he's so much more on, actually, a better page about, racial thinking in America, whereas like Jon Stewart is just like really fixated, on excising the white man's original sin somehow. There's been like a lot of talk about racial reckoning. I don't really like the use of the term reckoning in that. It's got subtly violent connotations in terms of how most people, like in storytelling, use terms like we're going to have a reckoning and all that kind of shit. And I don't think it's possible as long as racism is treated as negatively as it is. All human beings, regardless of how we decide to label them as race, because of a function of our ability to see things and talk about them, there's always going to be kind of an inborn biases and opinions on things that don't exactly, match the observer. That seems to kind of just be a subconscious built-in feature of humanity. And it has like nothing really to do with like the modern day conversation around racism. I mean, for one thing, we got at least 3 or 4 different definitions of racism all being used all at once, situationally, depending on like who's talking and what they're trying to make out to be racist. I feel it shouldn't be encouraged, but it needs to be viewed more neutrally, because I don't think you can ever have any sort of peaceful reckoning as long as racism is basically the white man's N-word. That's always going to be like a barrier to that kind of stuff. I feel like the focus just needs to be on peaceful cohabitation more so than anything else. Because whether we like it or not, regardless of your opinions on other human beings or of history, we're all stuck on this planet together. And I, for one, would like to reach the end of my days in a peaceful fashion. And so, like, the more everyone around me manages to stay chill and keeps their shit together, the happier I am. And so I feel like we should all be on that page. Somehow we are not, though. Revenge is a powerful motivator and all that kind of stuff. But, like, today's episode just really devolved. Like, Jon Stewart getting all, like, almost, like, getting preachy. Jon Stewart channeling his inner Malcolm X there for a moment. There's just, I don't know, like I said, there's this undercurrent of anger in him that wasn't there in the past. And I find it strange how, like, so many of his videos, it's like has this little panel of observers of, like, young millennials, a nice, diverse crew who don't really have all that much to contribute to the conversation. A couple of them are better than others in terms of, like, being able to quip or, say something insightful, but they mostly just seem to be there so that they can also be on screen while he's talking and nod and smile so they can communicate to other young people who are watching this that Jon Stewart's one of the good ones and you can listen to him. He's an elder to be respected and all that. He's not just an old white man of his own kind. I think the problem with Jon Stewart is that he's on some sort of crusade to maybe on some level he's trying to like fix the damage, but I don't know. Like I said, as much as I thought it was interesting that he actually was able to take the stance of like green good but corporate green not good, which a lot of people can't seem to like leap that train track. He's more kind of in line with, like elite circle thinking about racial politics than, like, I guess one might say they would have hoped from him. I'm not sure if it's really a surprise or not. But there's definitely like there's a mission-driven kind of quality to everything being done there, and this is all being put together by Apple. None of it seems really genuine. It's all very carefully crafted. And like I said, I feel like the most interesting part, especially of this whole racism episode, is the interview with Cory Booker. And regardless of how you think about Cory Booker, I would recommend checking it out. And just to pay more attention really to Jon Stewart and how Jon Stewart just kind of won't leap past a certain point that Cory Booker apparently has. Or if he hasn't, he's a damn good liar. And isn't that what we want out of a president? Stay waspinated.